Muito bem-vindos, ouvintes do Block Insider. Hoje estamos aqui com Jimmy Song, um dos nomes mais conhecidos da comunidade Bitcoiner, pesquisador, codificador, criptográfico, né, na realidade. Vamos falar um pouco mais sobre a era Satoshi, sobre a criação do Bitcoin, sobre Satoshi Nakamoto, e um pouco mais sobre como o caminho foi percorrido entre 2009 e 2010 e entender mais um pouco sobre a tecnologia, como que a tecnologia foi craftada. Já de antemão peço que deem o like, compartilhem, comentem o que vocês acharem ao final e se inscrevam para mais podcasts que no futuro vão haver mais novidades bem bacanas.
E para avisar, esse podcast vai ser em inglês, então nós vamos trocar a partir de agora. Tá? So we want to talk, today we're going to talk about how the development of Bitcoin network goes into the beginning, the first few days, and then how Satoshi Nakamoto talked with a few guys, a few great minds that helped him to build what we understand as Bitcoin today. And we're going to try to make some timeline of events of how Satoshi built up everything and catch a few ideas, because of course Satoshi is in the shoulder of big names, big projects that come in before the Bitcoin network. So we would like to discuss as well. And but Leo, you can start, and then we go into the rabbit hole.
So, but first, we'd like to know, Jimmy, who are you? For those who doesn't know, where did you start your rabbit hole journey? Right? How did you enter this rabbit hole? And what do you do for living? How did you get there? How did you get here, actually?
Yeah, so I'm a coder. I've been a coder since I was like 9 years old. I've been working as a coder for a very long time. But I got into the Bitcoin space in 2011 when I read a story on Slashdot, and I've been sort of in it ever since. I write books, I speak, I teach, I do a lot of different things within the Bitcoin space. I don't really have like a normal job per se, and it's a little bit difficult to tell people what I do, but I just say Bitcoin expert basically. And yeah, I've been in it since 2011. I've been coding something or other in the Bitcoin space since 2013. So yeah, 13 years or 11 years, depending on how you look at it.
What gives you the feeling that Bitcoin will be something great in the future? What click have you in your mind to goes into Bitcoin, and not just the technical part, the development part of the code, but in a social context? Because I think this kind of part of understanding the beginning of the Bitcoin network, it's much more about the social context and the perspective of those guys, Satoshi and the others, on how Bitcoin could grow and become much more than just a monetary system.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think what you're talking about isn't social per se. It's just economic reality, and that's something that I started studying back in 2008. I don't know if you remember the Great Financial Crisis. I guess that was like 16 years ago, which is kind of crazy. But that was like a big moment for, I think, for a lot of people to understand, okay, this system isn't what I thought it was. And after learning about the Austrian economics and what real economics looks like, I think that's when it clicked for me that, okay, this is provably scarce, and that means that it has properties that make it an excellent money, unlike fiat money. And that's the part that I think a lot of people seem to like. This is what I hear from like a lot of altcoiners. How do you know if something else isn't going to take over and stuff like that? Well, there are certain things within money. There's network effects, and there's credibility, and credible scarcity and things like that, which you can't just get like at the beginning, right? Like if you launch an altcoin, there's no way to know that it's going to stay at the same level of supply, for example. There's no way to know that it won't get hacked, or if it's secure or anything like that. This is why Bitcoin has the properties. This is why people like Bitcoin. It's because it has credible long-term scarcity, and it's it's got the network effect, and it's decentralized, unlike everything else. So those things together, I think, have brought a lot of people in, and a lot of people have tried to launch altcoins and so on, but they've all been pretty much miserable failures or scams or something like that. So that's where I stand on this, and why Bitcoin is for me the best one and the only one.
It's funny because before Bitcoin, there was some projects that inspired Bitcoin, like DigiCash and etc. Why do you think that these projects doesn't work out? Why did you think that Bitcoin was the one who went forward, and not DigiCash or the many others that came before?
Well, it turns out like the secret sauce of everything is decentralization. So all of the projects from the 90s on, the cypherpunks have been trying to do digital cash forever. And pretty much every single proposal that came on the cypherpunk mailing list, and if you look at the original white paper, there are like 6 or 7 references to various different projects. Each and every one of them had the critical flaw of being centralized. And we had Liberty Gold and E-Gold, and the Liberty Dollar and E-Gold and things like that. And they got shut down because they were centralized. The government could go after them, and they did. They ran for like 10 years, but eventually the government came in and said, okay, you guys are shut down. We're not going to let you do it. And that turned out to be the critical flaw. Even DigiCash, that was David Chum's startup from like the 90s and so on. Yeah, it didn't go anywhere, largely because it was so centralized. The entire idea of DigiCash is that you have an anonymous bearer instrument, but you need an issuer, and you need to trust the issuer of that instrument. And that's where the critical flaw is. There's a central party. And it turned out that like the banks that David was trying to work with and stuff, they didn't want to like do it because they didn't want to run afoul of government regulation and so on. And pretty soon after that, instead of digital e-cash, we had credit cards basically take over, because that was a lot easier to comply with and so on. And you automatically had names and expiration dates and sometimes addresses and things like that, which you had to enter for all that stuff. So the reason why these other projects didn't work is because it was centralized. And once you have that decentralization, well, it adds the secret sauce to everything, and it's not a property that you can just sort of sprinkle on. As far as I can tell, Bitcoin is the only one that has it, but that's the secret sauce. That's the reason.
Jimmy, can you show us how Satoshi managed to achieve this kind of decentralization? How he built that, and something that keep going till today? Can you show us?
Yeah, I mean, it was there were a whole bunch of different innovations that came before that, like, sort of led to what we call Bitcoin now. But there were several ingredients. So Wei Dai's B Money had this idea of a distributed ledger where everyone can check, but he had no way of sort of figuring out how to issue the currency in the first place. Hal Finney had reusable proof of work, which was really nice in the sense that you use computing power to issue the currency. He still didn't have this idea of a fixed limit or the halving or an emission schedule that would be strictly limited. So what he ended up doing he ran it on like known hardware and stuff like that. So it's still centralized, but it didn't have sort of all the ingredients necessary. And it was only with Bitcoin, and we suspect that Satoshi probably started working on it in 2006 and 2007, and released the white paper in 2008, and the network came on in 2009. But it was probably a multi-year project trying to figure out like all the sort of subtle nuances of doing all of that. But the main innovation was using proof of work, having a fixed supply, which you can do mathematically by having it every 4 years, which we're coming to very soon. But he combined a whole bunch of things that were sort of in the space already. It's just just combined them in an interesting way, and added this thing, the difficulty adjustment and the fixed supply. Those are the two things that were sort of missing before that Satoshi added to all this other stuff, and that made a system that works.
It's interesting because all the details that we see on Bitcoin was pre-written in the code, right? So in the recent emails that Sirius released on the court, we saw that Satoshi was already talking about the mining, how the mining was something that was going to provide value to the coin, to the Bitcoin, because it wasn't to be easy to get Bitcoins. It wasn't supposed to be easy to mine, so that will bring some kind of value value to the Bitcoin, right? So how do you see the proof of work above the other consensus algorithms that came out later? So did you still think proof of work, the mining, is the only one, and why is that?
Yeah, so proof of work is the only one that actually works. If you do almost anything else, what you end up doing is either it reduces to proof of work anyway, or you're just trusting some central authority. So Ethereum 2.0 now has like proof of stake and stuff like that. The thing is, like, you need to know they have like various punishment mechanisms if you essentially create the wrong block, quote unquote wrong block. And in order to know what the right block is as a staker, you have to essentially ask somebody if you can't figure it out, and that whoever you're asking ends up being the central party. So it's completely centralized. You can't do it without proof of work. When you have something like proof of work, the reason we call it mining is because it's very similar to gold mining, just in the numerical space instead of like dirt and rock. I've studied the gold industry a little bit, and it's something like 40 tons of dirt and rock that you have to process to get 1 ounce of gold. And it takes time and effort to go find that 1 ounce of gold for that reason. Proof of work is very, very similar in the sense that you have to roll through many, many numbers before you find your kind of nugget. But once it's found, it's very easy to verify, and that's the case in gold mining as well. And that ability to do that without anyone's permission is the key aspect. With staking and things like that, you're essentially getting other people's permission to go do it, right? Like whether it's the rest of the network or something else, you have to follow certain rules, and you have to ask some central authority essentially. Otherwise, you have like a network fork and things like that. So none of these other systems work. They don't actually solve the Byzantine generals problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's impossible to have digital scarcity twice. I think it's only one shot, and then if you want to recreate that, it won't be scarcity anymore because you have others similar ways. So for me, I think Bitcoin is unique because of that, because Satoshi create the digital scarcity on the first place in a very useful way. Some people could argue about that, about the energy cost or everything else. For me, it's not cost, it's transformation. We can transform energy into value, and then we can protect this value over time and over space. For you, how do you see this kind of building moment of Satoshi on the early days, creating this kind of structure and writing the white paper in the beginning? How do you see Satoshi collecting this kind of content on various projects? Projects they came before, like BMoney and DigiCash. I don't have sure, but I think the first email to Wei Dai was in 2008, and talking about BMoney, right? And what do you think Satoshi did to pick up the best parts of every project that came before and put together? How do you think he managed to understand the best part of every project and then put all together to create Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, the cypherpunk mailing list, I think, was the main source, and we don't actually know if Satoshi was on that list or whatever. But the discussions around digital money have been going on since like 1992, and I mean, you can go even further back. I think David Chaum's paper on eCash came out in like 1980, only like 4 years after. Diffie-Hellman, wrote about public key cryptography and so on. So there's been, many, many years of discussion around this. And, people like Hal Finney and Nick Szabo picked up on the fact that you could, like when Adam Back introduced proof of work for, electronic remailers, that hey, this is something that we can maybe use. And they tried to figure it out. They were trying all sorts of different designs, including Hal Finney's reusable proof of work and so on. But the discussion had been going on for a long time, and they were throwing ideas together all the time and trying to figure out, okay, what parts can work and what parts not. And you could see in some of those emails that were released in the COPA case that Satoshi was definitely going back and forth with people like Adam Back and Hal Finney and others. Hey, like, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of this? And as he was releasing the white paper, Adam was just like, hey, you should go read this paper and acknowledge Wei and all these other people. It's not like something that grew out of just like one person's mind. It's something that had been developing for a while in the cypherpunk community. And I think it was fairly close like I said, the two big innovations were the difficulty adjustment and fixed supply, which none of the other systems had. Satoshi brought into Bitcoin. But all of the other stuff, you could find some version of it in a former project. Just sort of like being aware on the cypherpunk mailing list and of the code and the papers that were going around. I think that was ultimately what led to its creation. It's not like just born like miraculously from one person's mind. It had been something that was brewing for a long time.
That's interesting because I've talked to a few Bitcoiners, Brazilian Bitcoiners, and we have this kind of understanding. There's two arguments to say that Bitcoin was created or was discovered. What do you think? Because when we think about that, we can see that it wasn't created by a single person or a single mind. It took a lot of things, a lot of parts, a lot of concepts from different persons. Do you think that Bitcoin was some kind of discovered in some moment, now we have everything we need, let's put together? Or do you think that there are a few persons that have been creating this for a few years?
Yeah, I mean that's a much deeper philosophical question, I think, because I mean, do you own the ideas that you have, or is it something that you're discovering? Does it already exist or not? And you can go all the way back to Plato and his forms and things like that. Like the ideas already exist. It's just humans that have them later or not. So in that sense, like all ideas are I guess. Discovery. It's not something that you create. We don't really have that capacity in a metaphysical sense, I think, because, I mean, I don't, it really depends on your philosophy. Does a song exist before the artist thinks of it or not? I mean, the notes are there, music, exists. It's like putting it together and so on. It's a deeply philosophical question, and I'm not sure I really have the vocabulary or the philosophical background to really talk about that in a really intelligible way. But I will say though that that almost every idea is like that in the sense that it's cumulative and it builds on other things, and Bitcoin is definitely no exception. I mean, you go all the way back to public key cryptography and everything from there. It's all building on top of those innovations, and it didn't just sort of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's why I was asking about that, because it's indeed a philosophical question to do, and I will go back on the technical part, but I have just one more question. It's kind of a philosophical question as well. Do you think that Bitcoin is the final money? Because when we think about that, if Bitcoin was discovered or created, it doesn't matter actually, because it's already here. But in the way and the structure that has today, Bitcoin is the final money that we have in our society, or could have something, some kind of evolution of the Bitcoin network?
Well, I mean, Bitcoin already exists. So is it the final money? I don't think anyone would say that. Like you have no idea what could be discovered in the future. What I will say though is that altcoins are not an improvement in any way, shape, or form. So like the problem there is that for a lot of people, they tend to look at this from a technical lens, right? And they say, okay, well, it's like a mobile phone or something. Well, this phone is the same as the other phone, except it has a few more megapixels on the camera, so therefore it's superior. And from a purely technical standpoint, you would be right about the two phones. But Bitcoin is not just a technology; it's a money, and it's more an economic thing than it is a technical thing. So yeah, you can alter the code and add an extra feature, but that doesn't make it a superior money, right? Because money has network effects. There's credible long-term scarcity to think about. There's centralization, decentralization to think about. Those are not things that you can just sort of add through technology. That's not how centralization or decentralization or network effects work. You can have lots of people, on one network, but like a new network that has an extra feature doesn't necessarily win because there's a momentum in having a network, and network effects are very, very strong. This is why, for example, eBay hasn't had like a real competitor in 25 years or something like that, because they have the network effect. Buyers want to be where the sellers are, and sellers want to be where the buyers are. You can make an auction site with better features than eBay. It doesn't matter. It's not just on the network effect alone, you're not going to win unless you can sort of overcome that. So that's just one aspect of it. Centralization, decentralization is another one, and so on. So to sort of beat out Bitcoin, you're going to need to be like at least an order of magnitude better than Bitcoin in a lot of different ways, while keeping a lot of the same features. So decentralization is a significant one. The network effects are another significant one, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, but is it likely right now with any of the stuff that's around? Absolutely not. Like there's like the people that are hoping Solana will beat Bitcoin or something like that. I mean, you don't understand money. You're just sort of going on hopium and so on. And unfortunately, that's very common in this space, where you have a lot of people that are hoping for things rather than learning the actual reality underneath. And they would rather sort of live in a fantasy world where they might win rather than, like examining reality for what it is. And I mean, there's no better sort of display of that than the BSV community, who, despite all the evidence to the contrary, still are hoping that their coin becomes the dominant one, and so on. But I mean, like that's just one of many, and everyone that holds an altcoin to some degree is sort of practicing deceiving themselves, basically.
Galera, uma pausa rápida aqui para perguntar se você já utiliza, se você já é um leitor da nossa newsletter Block Insider. Isso mesmo, o mesmo nome dos nossos programas aqui no YouTube também é o nome da nossa newsletter principal lá do BlockTrends, que é uma newsletter que sai semanalmente aí com vários assuntos sobre Bitcoin, criptoeconomia, sobre mercado global, macroeconomia, etc. E essa newsletter é bastante importante para você acompanhar todos os movimentos do mercado. Então eu vou deixar um link aqui abaixo na descrição, onde você pode se cadastrar gratuitamente e receber esses conteúdos no seu e-mail toda semana. Valeu? Agora vamos voltar lá para o episódio.
I'm curious about something. At the time of the creation or discovery of Bitcoin, was a bunch of cyberpunks discussing about the money system future, the future of money of the money system, and now we have BlackRock buying. So something happened in the between. Before that was a bunch of cyberpunk, really smart ones, talking about the technology, and now we have really big adoption. So what do you think that happened? It was the Bitcoin Pizza Day, that what the breaking point of the word about Bitcoin? Was the Bitcoin Pizza Day. Finally some goods was bought with Bitcoin, or the Satoshi disappearing was the critical point of the no return in Bitcoin, let's say in that way.
Yeah, I don't know if you can point to any particular thing. It's like any network effect. At some point it's dominant and you kind of see it, and it just sort of happened, and you can't point to exactly when it happened, but I mean, like it's like trying to say, all right, when did eBay win? I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe when Yahoo auctions like went offline or whatever, like back in '99 or something. But like that's one of the marks. But like the other auction sites were dead long before eBay, long before they actually died. Like there just weren't enough people going on there and so on. I don't know exactly when that point was, but yeah, I mean, altcoins didn't really exist until 2011, and certainly by then it was pretty decentralized, and everyone was already talking about it. I mean, you can go back to like the Bitcoin talk forums and stuff. People were thinking about, okay, what would a Bitcoinized world look like, and so on. And Hal Finney was like, you should get a few just in case it catches on, and here's like the prediction for how much each Bitcoin will be worth, if it overtakes gold and all this other stuff. And that was many, that wasn't very long after the Bitcoin network launch. It was pretty obvious, I think, to people fairly early on that this already had the network effect, and wasn't likely to give it up as a monetary network. Honestly, we haven't seen anything like this in pretty much all of history, because it's digital, it's decentralized, and it's scarce. So far, it's the only thing that has all three of those properties. And the rate at which it's getting adopted is much faster than pretty much any other kind of money. So at least any other money that isn't sort of forced by government through legal tender laws or something like that. So it's quite unique, and I don't know if we can like sort of point to something and say this is the moment when Bitcoin became the dominant thing or whatever. It's many things, but it's like any network effect. You just sort of you get into it and it's like, oh, okay, we're now a part of this. And for everyone that's gotten in, that's been their experience, right? Like you hear from enough people that you get curious about it, and you get into it. This is as true of Pleb who got in 2018 as it is Michael Saylor or BlackRock or anybody else. You get into something with a network effect like this as a result of hearing about it from other people. And like when is that network effect like dominant? I don't know. But it's different for everybody.
Follow with this question. I believe that when Satoshi disappeared was a very unique point on the history of Bitcoin network, because it was something really meaningful for the understanding of don't have a creator with us. And that part of understanding Bitcoin as a decentralized network couldn't have a creator with us, because otherwise we always was thinking about a Bitcoin CEO like we have in other networks today that has a lot of CEOs around there, and it also doesn't need decentralization apart from they selves tell about decentralization, but we know they aren't. For you, what do you think Satoshi? Of course, it's impossible to know, but what do you think Satoshi thought about when he disappears? I'm saying about the structure of the Bitcoin network. For Satoshi, was already finished, or still had some work to do in the next years, but he didn't want to be part of this because he think already had people working on this kind of structure. Do you think that Satoshi in some point think that okay, I don't there's no need to modify, there's no need to change anything on the code right now, so I have to, so I can rest and don't be part of this anymore? Or do you think that at some point Satoshi think, okay, there's enough people here, there's enough intelligent minds here, and I can take out my position of the project and let go on because there's other implementations but don't need me? Do you think that Satoshi think about that Bitcoin is finished and don't need other change in the code? Or do you think that that Satoshi think that people already have the value or the work to do for themselves without Satoshi?
Well, I mean, I'm a software developer, so I know like nothing is ever finished because you have bugs and things like that. So I doubt that was something like anyone would ever say about a software project. Oh, this is complete and perfect and done, and therefore I need to just leave. Like that's not the experience of any software developer I've ever worked with, and I think that's an unrealistic assessment of anything like that. I mean, like, why did Satoshi leave, or what was his thought? I have no idea, and I don't think honestly it's very important. What we do know is that Satoshi left. Could have been because he was arrested or died, or just wasn't interested or had other things to do or whatever. It's really not that important, honestly, or what his intentions were or what he was thinking, because the network is the network. It's something that already exists, and it had a momentum of its own, whether Satoshi was going to be a part of it from that point on or not. I mean, I think it kind of develops more or less similarly than in the way that it has. But regardless, like what his thoughts were, I mean, we can speculate, but I don't think it's that fruitful. And sort of saying, okay, well, Satoshi thought this in 2010, and therefore, this is what we should do. That's for me an appeal to Satoshi, and it's not really an argument. It's a sort of emotional manipulation or something like that. You should make decisions on technical stuff on technical merits, and monetary stuff on monetary merits, and so on. It doesn't matter what X, Y, or Z thinks. It should be determined by the argument set forth about that thing. And like this is how we make decisions in Bitcoin. Okay, is this upgrade useful? Is SegWit useful? Is this something that will help it scale? Is it going to help it help each person be self-sovereign over their own coins? Can they run their own node reasonably without without having to buy like $5,000 computers or something like that? Well, I mean, those are all important things, and those are the things that we make sure in the Bitcoin community to prioritize. And it really isn't about Satoshi anymore, and it shouldn't be. And I don't know. I don't feel that the speculation around it is useful or interesting or anything like that.
So since then, we had a few forks on the network, and the Bitcoin, it's a decentralized community. So where the community goes, the money go, the use goes, the money goes, the network who wins, it's the network who attracts the people, right? The original, let's say that way. So how do you see these forks, and why do you think that they don't catch a traction with the community? We are the original Bitcoin, but they don't catch traction. They don't go forward. Why do you think that? And what do you think that will happen with all these Bitcoin forks?
Yeah, I mean, the clear trade-off that they made was we will hard fork in new features and trade off decentralization. So they made their coin centralized in exchange for features. And this has been the trade-off that every altcoin has made for all time, right? Like the reason why you launch an altcoin is so that you add some feature, quote unquote, that is desirable, and in exchange for the feature that you want, you're getting rid of decentralization to do it, because you need a centralized entity to code in this stuff and have coordinate upgrades and all that stuff. And it turns out that people saw it and said, okay, that this doesn't make any sense, because now you don't have credible long-term scarcity. Because if you have a central party that determines this stuff, well, then how do I know it's going to actually stay scarce? And there's no incentive at that point to hold it over Bitcoin. So, I mean, I think it's just sort of the laws of economics. Decentralization is a very important part of that credible long-term scarcity. If you don't have that credible long-term scarcity, why would you hold it, right? Like, if they can print 2 million more coins, then why would you hold it? And that's what a lot of those coins actually did. Not Bitcoin Cash or so Bitcoin Gold or a few of these other ones, but a lot of them had like this not a pre-mine but like mid-mine kind of thing, where before they launch the client, they sort of assign themselves a bunch of the coin to, ostensibly for development or whatever. And it was like, okay, if they can do that just now, then they can do that in the future. It doesn't make any sense to hold any of it. So, I mean, like, why did it not gain traction? Because it didn't have any credibility. That's why it didn't have any traction. Like, you could say whatever you want in your press release about how you're following Satoshi's vision or something like that, but ultimately money is about credibility. Can you trust it? And decentralized things are much easier to trust than centralized things, because if you have a centralized entity that controls something, well, they can change their mind, and they have, like Ethereum has changed their monetary policy like 30 times. Like that's and they change it based on market whims and so on. That's not a great thing for money. You want decentralization so people can't change it. It works better if you know that it's extremely, extremely difficult to change, and that gives it more credibility. Basically, all of these other fork projects destroyed their own credibility by changing Bitcoin. That's it. I mean, whatever you think of the features, it doesn't matter, because ultimately you destroyed your own credibility to go do it. And that's why none of these projects have caught up.
That's nice. I would like to go deeper on that and see your vision about a few things. And I would like to move on a little bit on the history and come into the recent events. And this perspective of changing the code, and if goes with the Satoshi vision, and not mean the token, but the Satoshi vision about the code, or do you think that thinking about what the Satoshi vision is a fair way to understand how to change the code today? Or do you think that what matters today is the actual community that is building the Bitcoin protocol today?
Well, I mean, the thing that Satoshi understood, and the reason why people appeal to Satoshi, is because Satoshi understood some, fundamental monetary truths, right? Like the fact that you have the difficulty adjustment to make mining harder as you get more hash rate online, and a fixed supply. That those were, again, genuine innovations, but they're part of the Austrian economics. These are some properties of money that are desirable just by examining, economics, right? Studying economics. What is human action? Why do people do things a certain way? What do they prefer, and so on? If you study that, you understand, okay, these are the properties of money that make people want it and are desirable and so on. So really, it's not Satoshi's vision that is important. It's it's the reality of economics, right? Like how people act and why people get one thing or another, and how people prefer things earlier than later and so on. Those are the important things. And as far as I can tell, Bitcoin is adhering to all of those things, where you can be self-sovereign over your own money. Now, like even if Satoshi were to come back right now and say, well, this was my vision or whatever, I don't, if it's against what we've learned about economics, especially through Bitcoin, then I think a large part of the community would disagree with him and leave, right? Like, or would not follow him. So the sort of ideal that we're trying to get to is not whatever Satoshi had in mind when he created the coin. The ideal we're trying to get to is the ideal money. And I think closer than we've ever been with any other money in history. And that ideal is what we should try to go towards, not, what Satoshi thought at X, Y, or Z. The fact that Satoshi's, concept of money or his vision of money or of the ideal money was much closer than any other money that we had before is a credit to Satoshi. But that's not the end goal. The end goal is to have a money that is best for everybody, and that is what we're trying to make Bitcoin into. And I think it's so far been pretty successful.
Yeah, I was asking this because in the last year we have been a lot of discussion about how the changes on the Bitcoin protocol have been aligned with the Satoshi vision of the future of Bitcoin, and mainly because we have a few changes, I not mean changes, but a few developments on the Bitcoin network that could differ about how Satoshi firstly thought about the Bitcoin network. And today we have more thoughts about the scalability and the use of the Bitcoin protocol. And in the last few months, we have been seeing a huge growth on the Ordinals protocol use and in other scalability solutions. What do you think about how the Bitcoin is evolving today around this different uses of Bitcoin without be precisely money, but be a store of content, a store of data, as has been seen on the Ordinals protocol? And how do you think that this kind of change or this kind of developments on the scalability of the Bitcoin going to second layer, third layers, and other stuffs align with the Satoshi vision, or doesn't matter the Satoshi vision on this kind of scalability and use of the Bitcoin today? Do you think that the community today is more divided about this kind of use of the Bitcoin, if there's a correct use of the Bitcoin protocol?
I think ordinals, inscriptions, all that is a stupid distraction to get idiots from their money, right? Like separate, suckers from their money. Basically, it's hyping up stupid stuff, which is what VCs are very good at, and a lot of VCs are funding this stuff. It's stupid. It doesn't matter. It doesn't add anything. It's not useful. It's just people playing with monkey JPEGs or something. It's completely idiotic. And they brought this in from Ethereum and all these other coins or whatever. But people act like this is new. This is not. It's been there since 2013. I one of the early projects that I worked on was colored coins. It's the same concept. It's BRC20 basically, or ordinals or whatever. It's just version 2.0. And the thing is, like, all of these things are completely centralized. So again, you have no credibility about the persistence of this stuff or the value of this stuff. You have this monkey JPEG that's supposed to be collectible or whatever, there's no guarantee that it won't be duplicated or changed or whatever. It's a centralized party that you're trusting that's saying, okay, well, that's it. We're not going to make more or whatever. It suffers from the same trust problems as anything centralized. So I don't see it as anything interesting. I think it's a bunch of scammers that are scamming people, and a lot of people that kind of want to get scammed because they're hoping to get rich by doing no work. And there's always going to be people like that, but I don't think it's useful in any way, shape, or form. I don't think it's helping the Bitcoin network because it's taking up block space that honestly should be going towards monetary use cases. But this will pass. I have no doubt about that. Like, there's too many these hype cycles come and go, and what was popular 5-6 years ago, I think it was like crypto kitties or whatever. Like, no one thinks about that now. And that's been the case with all these altcoins. They have their day in the sun, and you can hype it for some time with a lot of marketing, but it's they're all riding on Bitcoin's coattails, just sort of associating itself with Bitcoin and saying, okay, well, Bitcoin has this credible long-term scarcity, and it's been going up for 15 years, and we can be the same, right? Like that's their implication with all of this stuff, and I'm here to tell you it's not. It's completely centralized, and it has no credible long-term scarcity. So, yeah.
I think it's interesting because in the way or another, back then the people in the community, in the Bitcoin community, says that 1 Bitcoin, 1 Satoshi equals 1 Bitcoin, 1 Satoshi. But with the ordinals, you can see people trading the JPEGs of monkeys, even if you think it's a scam, or if you think it's a good thing. No matter how do you see that, but you can see people trade 1 JPEGs equal 1 Satoshi, inscribed in 1 Satoshi, for 3, 4, even 10 Bitcoins. So do you think that this doesn't change the market, the market system for now, at least for this moment, where people are trading 10 Bitcoins for 1 Satoshi? Because in the end of the day, it's 1 Satoshi. It isn't a JPEG. It's 1 Satoshi with some meta, some JPEGs inscribed on. But people are changing 1 Satoshi, 10 Bitcoins for 1 Satoshi. How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, the only real impact is like MEV, or minor extractable value, and it changes the incentives a little bit, but and maybe for the short term it does, but I see these things all going away at some point. The thing about all of this stuff is, yeah, you might be trading 1 Satoshi for 10 Bitcoin, but that's not very liquid. It has very little liquidity. When you're going to sell it later, it's going to be very difficult to do so. It doesn't make a good money. It doesn't make a good anything, really. It's just somebody, you have to essentially find somebody that's willing to pay for it, and if they don't value it the same way you do, then good luck. And this thing about illiquid markets, you can get very high prices very quickly, but it's only among a very small group. Not anyone's going to take it. Bitcoin has very deep liquidity pools, and that's a big requirement of money. Is you need those liquidity pools, because it needs to be something that is accepted by more people as time goes on. That's part of the network effect. There's no network effect on ordinals, right? Or I mean, it's very little, and they're trying to generate it through marketing or whatever. But at some point it'll go down, and at that point it's good luck trying to find somebody that'll buy your rare sat for 10 Bitcoin or whatever. I mean, it's stupid. I don't see any reason for any. There's no labor going into it. It's just I mean, at least useful labor going into it. It's just idiotic. I don't see any use.
Yeah, we are almost running out of time here, and I would like to move a little bit to the future now. What do you think that about the scalability of the Bitcoin network today, and what changes, what developments could have a huge impact on the Bitcoin protocol today, and do you think that Bitcoin, that Satoshi thought about those scalability developments on the early days? Do you think that he thought about someone has to change this in the future to achieve the real scalability and the use of the Bitcoin as a monetary protocol? Because I think today we have a few technical how can I say, a few technical, not problems, but limitations that Bitcoin cannot have a huge use on the daily basis. Do you think that the scalability protocols or the scalability developments must have a huge impact on the Bitcoin protocol today? Or what do you think about the future, the next years of the Bitcoin?
Oh, well, so to answer the first part of the question, Satoshi clearly thought about this, and he actually said, the lock time and sequence fields were originally there to see if there could be something like a payment channel. Now, it didn't work because a miner can put in an earlier state and there's nothing that you can do about it. With the Lightning Network, we've sort of like completed that vision, I think, that Satoshi had at the beginning by making that enforceable with clawbacks basically on chain and things like that. So that does help scalability. The thing that everyone wants out of Bitcoin is, okay, well, how are you going to scale to 8 billion people right now? And it's like, you don't have to do that on any network. You don't go in day one saying, okay, here's exactly what we're going to do. This is where markets can be very efficient. They figure out solutions. Now, some of it might involve, trusting somebody for some small amount or whatever. But, this is where a lot of different solutions are coming in. Not only Lightning, but you have Liquid and Mercury and, Fetty and Cashew and all of these other sort of secondary layers that are, that leave no on-chain footprint and so on. So, and there's like sort of interactions between the two that may make it very interesting as well. You can open a Lightning channel off a state chain without having an opening transaction on chain and things like that. Which if it all interoperates, then great. Like you can have more or less infinite scaling at some point. But this is where you need research and things like that. The doomers that are like, well, it doesn't scale to 8 billion, I give up. It just seems like such a stupid argument. Like, it's working right now for a lot of people, and necessity is the mother of invention. Not like you don't have to invent it at the very beginning before it's needed. And that's unfortunately the attitude of a lot of trolls online or people that like want to denigrate Bitcoin or say Bitcoin's useless because it doesn't scale to 8 billion people right now. It seems stupid to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think we will have to have this kind of demand shock to have the solutions popping up, like you have a few months ago with the ordinals, the transaction fees spiked up, and then we start to see a lot of development like BTM that comes out on that same moment, trying to scale the Bitcoin network and other stuff. But I think as that, do you have any more questions, Leo?
I mean, I sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't really understand it.
No, I was just agreeing with you and asking if Leo have another questions, but I agree with the part of the development.
I think that I just want to ask about your view about the Satoshi's request to the network being semi-anonymous, the US, can you help me out? How for the users to be anonymous, yes, in the network, and how this why this is so important to him in this in the emails and so on. For now, I think it's the last question. If you have another one later, feel free to do.
Yeah, I think you're asking about privacy and you know, on the network and so on, and that is like a big cypherpunk value is getting privacy, but there's a trade-off there too, because the more private you get, the less assured you can be of the supply. So there's a theorem about you know, in computer science about this, where you can either be completely sure of the supply or completely anonymous. You can't have both. And you could kind of, like, this is kind of the problem in something like Zcash or like Monero. You're never really sure how much Monero exists or how much Zcash exists. There could be an exploit, or, you know, the developers could put in something and you would have no idea. In fact, this has plagued a lot of these privacy coins. I think Bitcoin at one point had a bug where you can inflate the supply and so on. And Bitcoin runs the same protocol essentially as Monero. And you know, that coin got ruined because no one knew how much Bitcoin there actually was, because it's not on chain. So you know, there's a trade-off there. I think we can get good enough privacy through, you know, like good practices and so on. If you're concerned about that, you can more or less have private transactions. Is it perfectly private? Probably not. If you had all the information that you know, in the world, then you can figure out who's who. But you know, good enough is being able to evade sort of like you know, governments that are coming after you or something like that. And I think we have enough tools to do that, especially with, like, you know, Lightning Network, submarine swaps, and all these other techniques, you know, peer swaps and coin joins and things like that. So, you know, the bigger thing, I think, because Bitcoin is money, is that credible long-term scarcity. And you don't want to reduce that in any way by adding completely private stuff. You just want it to be good enough so that they can't come after you.
Amazing. I think that's it. I think we have covered a lot of topics over the history of the Bitcoin. I would like to thank you a lot, Jimmy, for having with us and have this conversation. If you have other final message, or you'd like to tell the people how to follow your work and other stuff.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter, or X, it is now called, Jimmy Song. And I have a newsletter, jimmysong.substack.com.
That's it, guys. Follow Jim Song on Twitter and follow his newsletter. Jimmy, thank you so much for this conversation. I hope we can have other chats on the future, or I don't know. Leonardo, do you have something to say, or we can close here?
Well, just thank you, Jimmy. Thank Jimmy too for having this conversation with us. I think it was very lightning. for all of our viewers. So thank you for coming with in our podcast.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Pessoal, muito obrigado por vocês acompanharem aqui o podcast. Não se esqueça de deixar o seu like aqui embaixo e, obviamente, se inscrever aqui no canal para continuar acompanhando esses materiais. E a gente se vê no próximo podcast. Tchau. Bye.
Bye.